Hello, everybody. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, man, Azekahh, man, it's been really long since you uploaded a video. You know, it's been a long time, and I know what you're thinking. I know what else you might be thinking. It's like, oh, there's a new Azekahh video? Really? Oh, he promised us a Grimdark. Well, to be honest, I really don't know if this is gonna be a Grimdark or not, because I lost my list. And I can't find it. So I was just scrolling through my inbox trying to find my list because I know somebody sent it to me. And I just opened a random message and it said, hey, it would be funny if you read this. So I promised everybody I was going to read on Monday, so I have to read this. I have no idea what it is. It's just some random request from some random guy. I don't even know, man. I gotta get this video out here. I gotta read something. I gotta read. So, without further ado, I'm gonna read the story. I guess it's called Enchanted Twilight. I don't know who it's by, but apparently it's by Twilight. And now you might be suspecting me of picking and choosing this one because it has Twilight in it. But no, I randomly chose it. Please don't hate on me or hit. Okay, guys. Okay, I'm gonna read now. It had been a week since Twilight had been caught by Celestia using the Want It, Need It spell in her Smarty Pants doll, causing half of Ponyville to crave it and culminating in Celestia having to put a hoof in to stop the chaos. Twilight walked through the door to jeers and laughter as she took her place and desk amongst the other colts and fillies in Magic Kindergarten. Oh no. The teacher, Asteria, strode in and had Twilight introduced herself amidst giggles and sniggers from the class. And so began the first humiliating day, back in Magic Kindergarten. This is already going to be great. Twilight walked into the classroom, sitting down quietly, as some of the colts and fillies still giggled at the thought of an older pony in their midst. She then heard crinkles in the escaping of air as thickly padded flanks fell into seated positions on either side of her. Marie and Winifred sat looking towards the front of the class while listening to Asteria's lesson on stall training. Then Twilight raised a hoof to proclaim she was already perfectly stall trained. She was asked to the front of the class. Well, Miss Sparkle, perhaps you would like to demonstrate to the class how big girls use the toilet. Ah. The teacher giggled as her horn glowed and a plastic foal's potty seat materialized before Twilight. Panicking, she realized she was being asked to use the potty before the rest of the class. Oh god, that's illegal. That's just illegal, man. Here and now? She asked to the nods of the teacher. I can't. She stammered as she sat on the potty, starting to stand up before it disappeared from under her. Her fall cushioned by the crinkly padding of the diaper she was forced to wear. As she looked up from her spot on the floor at the laughing children in class, her homework on stall training landed on the floor, stamped with a red hoof to show that she had failed. The note scrawled on the page said that Asteria wanted to see her new student after class. Twilight panicked as she tried to imagine what was in store. Twilight clopped at Miss Asteria's door and was called inside to her office. Ah, Twilight. Come in. We need to talk about your performance in class today. I'm afraid you're setting a bad example for the colts and fillies in my class, especially making them feel bad about still being in diapers. Some of them can't help it any more than you. Twilight looked insulted. I'm more capable of controlling myself, Miss Asteria, she blurted out indignantly. Young lady, we treated our mares with respect when I was your age. And don't tell me that this isn't what I think it is. She poked a hoof towards Twilight's diaper, which was visibly visibly damp diaper. Urine. Twilight's heart sank. She had wet herself? Her hooves shot forwards to cover the diaper. She managed to get out before Miss Asteria silenced her. Don't worry, I don't judge you. You're just a filly after all. She smiled a motherly smile as she pulled out a diaper from under her desk, using magic to float it before Twilight. Twilight had never seen anything so entrancing as that lovely, puffy diaper as it danced before her, her eyes spinning as her face broke into a big, goofy smile, looking with adoration at her favorite article of clothing. She willingly flopped back and allowed the teacher to change her diaper with a quick flick of her horn. Oh, God. "Thank you, Miss Staria. I love my diaper." Twilight beamed from her slouched position on the floor. The next morning, Miss Astaria had just left the classroom to check on something when a wide-eyed filly named Winifred leaned across her desk and whispered to her friend Mary. Giggling between themselves, they both turned to the somewhat goofy-looking Twilight. "Hey, Twilight, how much do you like diapers?" asked Marie, stifling a laugh as Twilight's ears flicked of their own accord. "This much," she proclaimed as she wobbly walked to the center of the classroom, her face scrunched up in concentration as she squatted and proceeded to use her diaper. Ugh. Much to the amusement of the colts and fillies in the class, rude noises emanated from her bottom as her horn glowed and started to write out how much she loved her diapers on the board. All was fun and games till, with a puff of magic, Miss Astaria appeared at the front of the class with a look of disapproval on her face. "Winifred and Marie, you should be ashamed of encouraging your younger classmate." "But I'm not younger," Twilight yelled out Twilight as she stomped her hooves frustratedly. Miss Astaria flicked her mane back, her horn glowing as the merit board glowed brightly, too. 2 demerits appeared under Winifred's and Marie's names, and yet another for Twilight, who now had as many demerits as were allowed before more serious punishments were to be implemented. "Young filly, it seems you and I need to have another talk after class today." The lesson continued as usual, and finished early to allow for changing of diapers for students that required it. Twilight looked worried as Miss Astaria clopped the door shut behind the other students, her horn glowing as she studied her book. Colt and filly care for the caring mare. "Twilight, I'm not sure whether being in kindergarten is really good for you anymore." She smiled a sly smile as the filly looked visibly excited. "Am me allowed to graduate again?" She was now bouncing in her seat excitedly. "Maybe in a year or two, sweetie," she smiled. "At least, after you've had a small discussion with your daddy." Mr. Sparkle, this is so dumb. Mr. Sparkle came in through the school doors and passed along the halls until he reached the room labeled Nurse's Office. Upon heading inside, however, he was not expecting to see what he was seeing right now. "Twilight!" he exclaimed, galloping over to his daughter, who was slumped on the floor, cuddling her Smarty Pants doll, and sucking her hoof as she looked up at her Dada, with big, unblinking eyes full of wonder. A lollipop lay nearby, and seemed to be the culprit of the strange, sticky yellow gloop about her maw. That's... description, man. "What am I going to do with you, my silly little filly?" he whispered reassuringly to the now cooing Twilight as Miss Astaria trotted into the room. "Ah, Mr. Sparkle, I see you found Twilight. I'm glad you're here now because we need to talk about your daughter's learning abilities." "What about them?" questioned the wary Mr. Sparkle, and he stroked his daughter's mane from her mouth. "Well, as you can see, even standing on those wobbly little hooves is quite the challenge for Twilight now, and I don't think she's setting the best example for the other students in my class. So I think she'd benefit more from attending, magic nursery school instead." Twilight's father looked crestfallen. He had high hopes for Twilight, but looking at her now, it did make sense. Okay. After all, with every hour, each magical spell she had cast to clean her diaper was becoming less powerful, and without the ability to magic it away again herself, she was quickly becoming the stinkiest student in the school. Perhaps it was for the best. "Me no have to go to kindergarten no more?" she babbled to Miss Astaria. "Nope. You just rest your silly little head, and I'm sure your daddy will take you home to Mommy for some nice nummies and a nap." Miss Astaria almost seemed to be happy at Twilight's father's understanding. It had been a while since he had his little girl back. Perhaps this would be like old times when she used to spend more time with her parents. However, as this thought occurred, he began dreading the looming diaper duty that would undoubtedly follow. This is so dumb. Who would sit down and take the time? "Oh, she's so cute!" Miss Sparkle squeed over her now infantile-minded daughter, who days ago had been the princess's protege. She now sat in her puffy diapers on the living room floor. "I can't believe how much I've missed having our daughter home." Oh, well, actually, that was Mr. Sparkle, so... let me rephrase it. "I can't believe how much I've missed having our daughter at home," said her father as he trotted into the next room to get to work on Twilight's nursery. After a while, though, it became obvious that there was too much work to be done in the nursery for one lone pony, so the couple decided to get a babysitter to come care for their new little filly. A short time later, the doorbell rang, and in stepped Trixie, the great and powerful babysitter, as her card read. "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Sparkle. Me and your daughter are old friends, so I know we are going to get along just fine." Right. "That's good to hear, because we really need to get our sweet little Twilight's nursery together before nap time." At this, Miss Sparkle joined her husband in the next room, laughing and messing around as they worked on the new nursery. In the meantime, Trixie sat by Twilight and was waving a hoof at her face. "You really are all babyfied, aren't you, Twilight?" By now, Trixie was grinning as she took out the parade rubbery baby food and magicked a spoonful in, deliberately messily feeding Twilight as she sat on the floor. Twilight's horn, now shrunk from the lack of use, glowed dimly as her earlier magic spells started to undo themselves. Her diaper rapidly expanded with days of magicked-away messiness. It was filling up like a balloon, causing Trixie to laugh merrily. That's just so... This brought the attention of Twilight's mother. "What's going on in here? Oh my, it seems we have a stinky little filly in here," Miss Sparkle proclaimed as she ruffles her goofy-faced daughter's mane. "What? You have like a gallon of poop in your diapers, so before I do anything, I think I'm just gonna pat you on the head." "I'm going back to the nursery. Be a dear, Trixie, and see to Twilight's diaper, would you? I'm afraid she won't be able to repeat the magic that cleaned it before you'll have to do it manually." And with that, she trotted off to help decorate the other room, leaving Trixie to deal with Twilight's prominent accident. "Ew, this is so gross. Your mother should really be dealing with this, but I guess I'm in charge while she's away, eh, Twilight?" Trixie's horn glowed pink as she aimed it at the little filly's diaper. She shut her eyes and concentrated as she tried to magic away the mess, going against the Mrs. Twilight's advice. If anything, more mess was made, making the diaper even worse. Oh, darn. That did not go as planned. Well, I guess I'm going to have to change it the old-fashioned way. The process was almost done, and Twilight's bottom cleaned and wrapped in a new diaper. Trixie was concentrating on the task at hand as she levitated the pail to catch the filthy diaper, when suddenly something sticky hit her maw. She instinctively licked her lips, tasting something sticky and... oh, God. Sticky and sweet. She looked down to see Twilight smiling goofily as she magicked the spoon into her Trixie's mouth. "Twilight, no!" she screamed, but it was too late. Having planted the enchanted rubbery lollipop in the kindergarten nurse's office, she was sure she had safely but effectively regressed Twilight back to being no threat at all. But even in this diminished state, she was still causing trouble. As Twilight thought about this, she could feel her thoughts slipping away and focusing more on dollies, cartoons, and diapers to the point that she subconsciously was starting to unpack a fresh diaper and was even starting to diaper herself. A whinny of panic escaped her maw. "Honey, those girls are awful quiet in there, don't you think?" Mr. Sparkle brought up this subject. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Sparkle. I don't know. "Honey, those girls are awful quiet in there, don't you think?" Mr. Sparkle brought up the subject carefully to avoid worrying his wife needlessly. "It's nothing, sweetie. I'm sure those two are having plenty of fun. Anyway, didn't the babysitter say they were old friends?" said Mrs. Sparkle, her horn glowing brightly as she put the finishing touches on the crib where Twilight's father applied the final coat of pink paint to the new nursery. "This nursery is even better than her first. I think..." Both parents perked up at hearing a strangely goofy laughing coming from the living room. Okay, I'm predicting this before I read on, that Twilight has now transformed Trixie into a baby. Just by the way the story's going, that's my prediction. Even stranger, it wasn't coming from their beloved big baby, meaning it only belonged to... "Trixie, darling, what are you doing in there?" Miss Sparkle stopped speaking abruptly as she left the nursery and came face to face with Trixie, a spoonful of rhubarb dripping from her maw.
Twixie going potty! Twixie going potty!
She announced, bending at the front and lifting her flank as her tail flagged high, allowing her... oh, God. Allowing her to deposit her yummy meal into her fresh padding. Miss Sparkle trotted to Trixie's trunk. She opened it to check for contact that had an uncanny resemblance... for contact details to alert Trixie's friends on relatives that she had been regressed. She came upon belongings that had an uncanny resemblance to those that arrogant pony who'd strode in Ponyville a few months ago and tried to usurp her daughter as the best at magic in Equestria. Oh, it seems our babysitter is arrogant and a liar, Mrs. Sparkle said, raising an eyebrow as she hoofed the trunk out of sight, calling her husband out to come help deal with the new filly.
Twixie Poopy! Twixie Poopy!
I don't... Like, I've never even imagined a human baby saying those words. Trixie Poopy. I don't know, maybe it happens. Twilight sang out as her hooves scrabbled at the floor for stability, her face scrunching as she was trying to learn the potty. All shame from doing this in front of a class of fillies she didn't know had left her long time ago. She was now content to do this in front of her parents. Rhubarb coated her maw and bib courtesy of her mother, who was still hiding the drool-covered sticky maw flapping randomly while licking her lips. Oh, I skipped a line. Who was still hiding the fact that she was keeping the only child of the family in diapers. Paddled Trixie, her drool-covered sticky maw flapping randomly while licking her lips happily. A pleasantly goofy expression on her face showed the amount of rhubarb was being fed... that the amount of rhubarb she was being fed was effectively doing its job.
I'm so glad we were forced to adopt Trixie. She makes a perfect sister for Twilight, don't you think?
Mrs. Sparkle asked her husband. I admit, Twilight looks much cuter now, and she isn't asking 100 questions and grading us on our knowledge.
But you won't be saying that when it's your turn for diaper duty, honey, she responded.
Pretty soon, Twilight had gotten comfy on her new potty chair and was happily relieving herself straight into the comfy confines of the diaper she had forgotten to remove. Ah, how adorable. Perhaps it's a little too soon for potty training the girls. The parents giggled to themselves as they watched the girls play together all the way to bedtime. This is so... What? It's even better because this just came out of nowhere. Wonderful. This is true art right here. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.